Welcome back in, everybody, to a Tuesday edition of Birds 365. Joined now by Les Bowen. Les, great to have you on the show, man. How you doing on this Tuesday morning?
Hey, Zander. Hey, John. I'm doing great. Thanks.
Good to see you, Les. I don't know how early you popped in there, but Zander and I were discussing A.J. Brown. And I don't know if you heard his comment, but I knew I was standing right there. And I went, there's a bunch of people that are going to take this into a negative direction. So we'll set the stage after the game. Obviously, dominating performance, 269 rushing yards, 14 passes only. So, AJ, last question, by the way, was asked last, only 14 pass attempts. And he said, yeah, it's like a good and bad thing. We're happy the guys ran the ball, but we want the ball too. Laughed at that point, kind of chuckled. I wish there was a few more attempts, but it happens. You're on to the next game. You take it, so it's all good. Les Bowen, you've been around this game for a long time. I like guys who tell the truth.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was truthful. I don't think there's anything wrong with it.
I think you'd really have to stretch to find something to object to there. And he's right. I mean, everywhere I go, every podcast I've been on, every story I'm reading is, okay, the Eagles have found their
identity.
They're going to run for 270 yards in every game. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
No. It's easy to stop a running team unless you have Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson. All you have to do is put about 8 guys in the box, and Saquon Barkley's not going anywhere. You know, I mean, it's wonderful what they were able to do Sunday. It gave everybody the blowout win they've been waiting for, the blowout win they wanted the week before against Cleveland. But it wasn't any kind of template for the rest of it. That's ridiculous. And we do this every time this happens. Every time they run the ball well, it's, they can do this all the time. No, they can't.
I told Zander yesterday.
Reason with me, Les, because I get what you're saying. And Johnny Mack said,
I was in the concussion protocol.
I quote, Johnny Mack wanted to bash his head into the wall doing a show with me yesterday, which I wear now as a badge of honor. But, you know, the quarterback right now through the first 6 games of the year, they're 4-2. He's struggling to see the field a little bit. They've added a lot to his plate. Right? Yeah. From pre-snap reading, no Jason Kelsey. He's doing a lot more, and he's admitted to that. It's also a new offense with Kellen Moore. Isn't there some part of what they did on Sunday that you can take and expand on to help the quarterback acclimate to ultimately what they want him to be, which honestly, I don't know if he'll ever be that because they want him to throw the ball 40 times a game, and I don't know if that's going to be Jalen Hurts.
No, I don't know if they really need to throw it 40 times a game. I just think 14 is ridiculous. You know, I mean, they're not going to do that. You know, that if they throw it 25 times a game, you know, I think that's a pretty good number. Yeah, you're right about Jalen Hurts. He is not even Sunday's game. What you got was one incredible play where he put the ball right on A.J. Brown's hands on 4th and 3. 41 yards down the sideline.
Unbelievable throw.
Something of a miracle play. And if they hadn't hit that, what would have the reaction have been? Running that call on 4th and 3, you know, I would never have run that call on 4th and 3, but they did, and he put it right on A.J. Brown, and they scored a touchdown, and the Giants were done. It was a kill shot, you know. But outside of that, Jalen basically just didn't hurt them. I mean, he was 10 of 14. He threw it over the middle, I think, twice for completions, which was nice. But there was a lot more. I think Fran Duffy in a film breakdown showed, you know, there was a lot there with those mesh concepts, and he just couldn't.
Les.
That's really troubling. It's really troubling in year 5 that the quarterback can't see the open receivers, can't process what's in front of him any better than that. I don't understand it. I thought he was doing better with that sort of stuff a couple years ago than he is now. I don't know if he started to doubt himself or what he's seeing, or if he's confused. I don't have any idea what's going on, but he needs to be better, and he's going to have to be better in terms of the decision making and the overall game in order for them to really win something big. They're not going to face the Giants in the playoffs,
I'm comfortable.
But yeah, when you got Saquon Barkley, you're going to have a very strong running component in your offense. I mean, it would be ridiculous not to. You're not going to have the kind of offense you had a couple years ago where, the emphasis was very, very, very strongly toward the pass. It'll be a balanced offense, I think. But I don't think, there are so many people in this market that just want to hand the ball off to the running back and pretend it's 1949, and that's no.
I went to 75, but go back to 49.
Steve Van Buren. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing that happens every time, because the Eagles have had these games, these 200-yard rushing games. Nobody's had more. But before they had Saquon Barkley, they would have these little sort of pockets where they were, because the offensive line is so good as well. And the same thing would come up. It's not an identity game. I called it a statement game. You put up the bowling pin, you knock it down. It's not their fault the opposition was what it was. You take advantage of it. I called it batting practice fastball less, and they knocked it out of the park. And that's what you should do. But it doesn't translate. This week, Cincinnati's not a great team, but they have a quarterback who can generate a touchdown.
Yeah.
So you're going to have to play a little bit differently. To me, it's common sense. I don't know why people can't see it.
Yeah, and the Giants coming into that game were giving up 5.2 yards a carry on the ground. They came out of it, I think, at 5.4, which is the worst in the league. The Bengals don't have the best run defense in the league. They're at 4.4, but I haven't really looked into this deeply, but I think their first few games were really bad, and they've done a lot better since then. They certainly have a defensive line and a defense that can slow you down. They're going to have to. The Eagles are going to have to be a better balanced team, I think, this week. And you're right, Joe Burrow is going to show us, and I think that's one of the real things to focus on this week, is Joe Burrow is going to show us how much of the defensive improvement over the last couple games is real and how much of it is playing, Deshaun Watson and Daniel Jones. So, it was a wonderful game for people who have just been pining for that no doubt slam dunk win that the team has lacked for a year and a half or something. But it wasn't, it didn't put them at the top of the NFC or anything.
No.
Just a couple minutes ago on Sports Radio WIP, Nick Sirianni was on there, and my pander meter is going. You guys tell me how much it's going. Nick Sirianni, when asked if the Eagles are a running team, he says, "Damn right." That's Nick Sirianni's response on WIP just this morning. I don't know. Maybe they're going to take some.
Well, maybe so. We'll see if they can keep it again.
I think there's a medium. I think you guys are right.
Stop a running team.
Yeah,
I don't think it's real complicated. That's why you don't see teams that just run winning the Super Bowl. But we'll see.
Yeah. Well, it decreases your margin of error. Like
it does. And if the other team is scoring points easily through the air, you're at a real disadvantage, because you're not going to. The thing that you're not going to do is rip off those 55 and 40-yard runs every week. And that's what, otherwise it's really hard to score points with a running offense.
Yeah. And by the way, the Eagles have been effective running the ball for many years, because, Miles Sanders during the Super Bowl season, I think it was 1269, 4.9 yards per carry. I mean, they've been effective running the ball. They're just more effective now because they have a better running back. But because of the offensive line, they've always been a run team, believe it or not, at least in the modern NFL.
Yeah.
They're one of the more capable running teams and have been for a very long time. where the sort of the we go off the road is you should build around the running game. I don't think you can win that way consistently in the NFL. The closest would be Baltimore, as you pointed out, Les, and they haven't won yet. They're very good. At times they look unstoppable.
But something always happens in the playoffs, doesn't it? Yeah. Well, we'll see. I mean, Baltimore right now looks unbelievable.
They look tremendous. I thought they were the best team in the NFL last year, to be honest. And now they've added Derrick Henry to the mix. Now, the defense isn't as good because they lost Mike McDonald, but they're getting better. Long way to go. There is a lot of growth. And that's the positive to me of this team. Last year, as we know, 10-1, didn't get the Eagles much. You don't have to play your best football right now. You have to get incrementally better.
Yeah.
Do you see the upside that this team can? Right now, if you pin me down, I would say this is not a true Super Bowl contender. Do they have the time to grow into that?
Right. It's on the outside perimeter. It's not with those maybe 4 teams that you would say are really, you could see in the Super Bowl right now without any question. They're in that next group, but there's nothing wrong with that. The thing I'm seeing, I'm interested in is the defense. Is because a couple games ago, frankly, I thought that was going to keep them. I thought that was going to really limit their ceiling for how good they could be. Now, maybe, I'm seeing some things with Cooper DeJean and, some of the improvements they've made in the pass rush, Bryce Huff and the 4-point stance and so on. Maybe they're better. Maybe they're okay. But it's really hard to say because they've played 2 real patsies in terms of the opposing offense.
Yeah. Now, competence, it's intangible, but with a young defense, even to that point of playing Daniel Jones, Deshaun Watson, these terrible offenses, they haven't given up a touchdown in 9 quarters.
Right.
You start thinking, feeling yourself a little bit and saying, hey, maybe we can play. Your Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell. And forget the rookies. I mean, Jalen Carter's a young player. Jordan Davis is still a young player.
Yeah.
Nolan Smith, Bryce Huff, first-time starter. N'Kobe Dean. Zach Bond is new to playing a lot.
And they use N'Kobe in the right way Sunday. Going forward, that's the way to use him. Because I don't think he can really cover very well. So,
you know what though, Les? I think about this all the time. Where are these coverage linebackers other than Fred Warner?
Yeah,
like I saw Andy Reid when the Chiefs were playing the Ravens. Roquan Smith, everybody, all pro linebacker. Andy's game planning to get him in space in the passing game. That's what coaches do. I mean, linebackers can't cover except for Fred Warner.
By the way, did you see Brandon Graham outside?
Yes. And Josh Sweat as well. It did not work out well.
Brandon held, nobody got a catch on Brandon out there.
Yeah.
I was kidding with him yesterday. I was texting him, new career direction.
Josh Sweat, first play of the game, they dropped, and Malik Neighbors. It was not pretty.
That's true. That was one of the worst defensive plays of the game, really. But
but that's a curveball. I have no problem with that. You throw it out, you try to fool the quarterback, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think people they used to do it with Hassan Reddick a ton. You know that.
Yeah.
Anytime they drop Hassan Reddick, people would lose their mind. I'm like, I always make the baseball comparison. You can't throw 100% fastballs. You got to curve in there occasionally.
Yeah.
It's if you do it consistently, it becomes a problem. But this defense is getting better and better and better. And I'm with you. I don't know how much it means because the offenses have been so poor. Joe Burrow is going to be a great test for that because that's a guy who can play. We all know he can play. I think you're going to see Cooper DeJean tested, Quinyon Mitchell tested, and you're going to learn a lot about this team against Cincinnati. I don't know if you learned anything against the Giants other than well done,
Yeah, I think it was good for confidence and cohesiveness. Guys feel better about each other. They have more confidence in each other. If you're playing alongside Nolan Smith, you can actually see him making plays. If you are Nolan Smith, you see yourself making plays, and it's gotta be good for you. There's nothing bad about it, but it's not. It's not. Oh boy, from this day forward, we're getting half a dozen sacks a game.
Yeah, that I agree with.
How much do you take from the sack party, Les? I mean, they played that Giants O-line who was missing Andrew Thomas. I don't want to hang my hat on it, but 8 sacks, that's a lot of sacks for and a lot of guys, by the way, who haven't performed well so far. And 2 for Nakobe, 1 for Nolan Smith, 1 for Bryce Huff. Even Jalix Hunt got on the board, which maybe shows you how bad that O-line is over there. But how much can you take away from that? Or is it just shitty opponent?
A number of them were coverage sacks, Zander, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I that's a good sign. I think if you're getting coverage sacks, that means there's coverage. So I that's the kind of thing that was the excuse early on that we were getting was, quarterbacks are getting the ball out so fast. You can't possibly get any sacks. Well, the last few weeks they haven't been, either because they're not good quarterbacks or because everybody's covered. And you're seeing, you're not seeing a whole lot of just going right over guys in 2 seconds and dropping the quarterback as he's still moving backward. You're not really seeing a lot of that. You saw a couple of those, but mostly you're seeing quarterback goes back, looks downfield, looks right, looks left. Oh, here's a defensive. Here's a rush. Which before you didn't even have that. You had guys just standing back there, like ordering pizza and stuff. It was, but so it's much better. But I think it's indicative of the whole defense playing better, of the coverage side being better as well.
How much did shifting towards, because remember, again, we haven't talked about the slow start, so we'll go there. They haven't scored in the first. It's amazing. They're 4-2. They haven't scored.
It was horrible. It was a horrible.
It really was. And I looked at it.
I don't understand it because you saw the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Why couldn't they do that in the first quarter? What was the problem?
I noticed Jalen was feeling pressure before it was actually there.
Yeah.
And almost expecting it because Jordan wasn't out there. Jordan Mailata wasn't out there.
And Fred did not have a good start. He did not.
Yeah. He's almost seeing ghost a little bit, maybe.
Yeah. He was seeing ghost. And my point is that you can't play that way every week. And Jordan's not going to be out there for at least 3 more games. And if they continue down the Spread Johnson route, and they're probably going to because Mekhi Becton's in the concussion
protocol, you're not going to change his position in a week when he might not even be on the field.
Yeah. And boy, you show up to Cincinnati, not a great team, underachieving, disappointment to no doubt everybody in that city. But Trey Hendrickson is one of the best pass rushers in football. And really underrated guy, probably because he plays in Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to be going against Spread Johnson. Maybe you want to run it 45 times and throw it.
Maybe so, yeah. And I meant to look this up before coming on with you guys. I apologize sincerely. I'm going to ask this question without knowing the answer. Remember the tie game with Donovan McNabb in Cincinnati, the game where Donovan was? At that point, I'm pretty sure the Eagles had never won in Cincinnati.
Yeah, they have a bad record.
Have they won since then in Cincinnati?
I haven't gotten the game notes yet.
I'm going to have to look that up, but it's not a good place for them. There's a few places like that for no good reason. Tennessee, they have never won in Tennessee.
Yeah, well, it's always the AFC teams because you barely go there.
Yeah, you don't get there very often, but they've been there when Tennessee wasn't good, and they still lost, And I think that's the case with Cincinnati as well. It's just not a place where they win for whatever reason.
They lost there in 2016. Mm-hmm. And then in 2008, was that the game that you were talking about with Donovan? Yeah, that they tied in overtime. Does that sound right?
Tied.
Yeah, Donovan didn't realize the game could end.
He didn't realize the game.
Which I think is just crazy, by the way. Yeah. But I digress. No, you're right. They haven't won in Cincinnati.
They have not won. Yeah. Yeah. Not now. We're talking very few games.
Right, and none
Only
of the
one
players
more,
is around from either. Well, Brandon Graham from 2016, but it's not like you're playing the same people every time you go to Cincinnati.
No,
I don't think Donovan's going to be there Sunday, so
Yeah, the last time they were there was 2016. Wow, it's been a long time. And
Yeah, but
32
even going back to the old days of ground and pound football, they lost in Cincinnati a lot. They lost in 71, they lost in 79, they lost in 88, and they lost in 94. All the
Yeah.
wins came in Philly.
Those late
Yeah.
70s and 80s, the Bengals
Ken
were actually a
Anderson,
good team
man,
back
that
then.
was good, very good team.
It
Yeah,
was back when they were actually making it to the Super Bowl, although not winning it.
I advocate Ken Anderson for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. A really good quarterback that, for whatever reason, has not been put in yet. But yeah, they haven't had a great history. Nick gets asked about that. He'll probably get asked about that this week, and he'll say, and he's right. Like, what does that have to do with insert
It
name?
doesn't, but it's another little thing to keep on. I thought that about Tennessee, and then they played a game there where they blew a huge lead late, and I was thinking,
Yeah, I remember that game too. It's Jim Schwartz picket fence game.
yeah,
Which everybody loved that defense. But you're right about that part of it. As a whole, though, with this particular team, I think there's the luxury of this division this year. I thought was going to be there, but now I don't know if it's going to be there, Les, because the Washington Commanders look legit. Now, Jaden Daniels hurt his ribs. They labeled him as week to week. So maybe they come back down to earth. Marcus Mariota played tremendously, ironically, as the backup. When Jaden Daniels is out there, are you starting to believe in the Commanders as being a potential hiccup for the Eagles? Because, boy, looking at Dallas, I thought this was going to be easy pickings for the Eagles, the NFC East. Right. Now I'm not so sure.
Yeah, I think you're right. The Commanders are really feeling it. It looks to me like one of those years where they're going to go a long way this year. They're not going to win the Super Bowl, and everybody down there is going to think next year we'll win the Super Bowl, and maybe they won't be quite as good next year. I think there's such a lift when you're finally good and you've been bad for a long time, and things are, you're freed from the ridiculous owner and
it's like euphoric,
and bad management and bad coaching. I think they're kind of playing maybe above their heads a little bit. Not with Jaden Daniels. He's great. Wonderful player. But again, the league will adjust to him in the offseason like it did with Hurts and with other players, But I think they're going to have a heck of a year. And I think they might very well win the NFC East if the Eagles don't improve. I think the Eagles got to raise their game to be as good as the Commanders are right now, frankly. So, we'll see if they can do that. They certainly have the talent to do it. But the Commanders are just playing really, 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 really well. And they lost a big cog on their defensive line for the season. But
that's a big injury. Yeah. That's another thing. The Eagles' injuries, and they, Jordan's a significant one, but he's going to be back. Right. Some of these injuries, Aiden Hutchinson, I think Detroit's the best team in the NFL.
Yes.
Right now. But they lost Aiden Hutchinson. That is difficult to overcome.
It's huge. Yeah.
A lot can change in the league quickly.
And these devastating injuries, like you said, the Eagles haven't had one like that. You saw Chris Godwin last night. He's out for the season.
Yeah, he's done. Yeah.
40-some seconds left, in a game they're losing by 10. And they already lost Mike Evans to a re-injury of his hamstring earlier in that game.
Yeah.
Some of the real bad injuries like Godwin and Aiden Hutchinson and some of it's you don't need much of that to really change your whole outlook for your team.
Really is a war of attrition, the NFL.
Yeah.
And it's going to look a lot different. And a lot of times it does come down to who's healthiest as you get to the playoffs. And we got a long ways to go. But I guess we haven't gotten into Nick Sirianni at all because things have slowed down because you get the big winning cures all. But boy, it's a rough week for Nick Sirianni, man. Everybody was piling on
Yeah.
We've talked about this with you before, Les, but from day one, I didn't like the setup. I thought it was just wrought with potential problems. Nick is almost a lightning rod. If things go poorly, it's all his fault. If things go well, it's Kellen Moore, it's Vic Fangio.
Yeah.
And Jeffrey Lurie set all this up and said, yeah, this sounds like a good idea. I got to go straight to the top. What was Jeffrey thinking when he thought this was a good idea?
Boy, that's a good question, John. I'm going to say he was thinking he couldn't afford to fire his coach right after going to the Super Bowl, that he would get this reputation as a crazy owner who couldn't be satisfied after both Doug and Nick, if he'd have gotten rid of Nick last winter. Excuse me, I got a little bit of a cough here.
I'm losing my voice too. It's going around. South Jersey.
He's done this before. He did it with Andy. You remember the year 2011 when they were 4-8 and they won their last 4 games, and Jeffrey held a big press conference at the end of the season to explain that he was giving Andy one more chance, which was doomed from the very beginning. You don't give somebody one. No, who's ever won in that circumstance?
Yeah. Hey, he's a lame duck. Yeah. That the last thing you want to do is signal somebody's a lame duck at coach or quarterback, I think, in the NFL.
Right. I don't know, that Jeffrey's idea was a great one. I don't think it was. But I do think the team still plays for Nick, and we saw that. I think some of the criticism, Nick can certainly irritate me. He's gotten into this thing with you guys in the press conferences, John, of proudly proclaiming, I'll never discuss with you guys, blah, blah,
I
blah.
know. I don't even waste questions on injuries anymore. I'm like, come on, dude. The Fridays are like, you're going to give it to us in an hour. You can't tell.
Right.
I mean,
the things that he thinks are really important to keep from the public aren't usually very important.
No, they are not.
But as exasperating as he can be, he does still have the support of the team. I think.
It seems like it to me too.
Yeah. And as long as that's the case, I think you're in pretty good shape. Is he the greatest coach ever? No. But it's going to – I don't think he's the main issue, really, with this team right now. And we'll just see how this goes going forward, whether it's as unwieldy as we fear it might be, or whether somehow you can.
Who is the big issue? Because I think it's the quarterback on offense.
Well, Jalen's development is a big issue, whether that's all on Jalen or not, whether it's all the different offenses that he's had to, or different coordinators he's had to try to, figure out, or whether it's.
Les Howie brought up a good point. When he addressed that, he was like, you're going to lose coaches in the NFL.
Yeah.
If you're good, you're going to lose coaches. If you're bad, you're going to lose coaches.
Right.
And if you look at the offensive coordinators around the league, there aren't many who have been there for a long time. So either get a head coach that calls plays, or
which isn't that kind of what they wanted with Nick, though?
Well, that's
it sure was. Yeah.
They
which
wanted.
is why I wonder, maybe that is what they wanted to be the setup. And now because Nick has evolved into this CEO coach that couldn't call plays effectively or be the play caller, maybe they're not too happy with the setup right now, which is a revolving door, which is certainly making it harder for him to find a rhythm.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think he's got to figure it out, Jalen Hurts.
I do.
I do too. And I don't really understand. Jalen is such a closed book. You just can't. You don't get inside his process of how he's doing this, what he's trying to do, how he sees it. Everybody talks about how hard he is on himself, but you don't hear a lot of introspection from him. You don't hear a lot of, I should have done X instead of Y. It's really hard to parse for me.
Yeah, no doubt. Les, great takeaways, man, from the game. We appreciate you joining in today. You always have a great objective take. Sometimes you bring me back to reality, Les, and that's why I love you. We appreciate having you on, my friend. We'll talk to you again soon. All right, man?
At Les
Good to see
Bowen,
you,
make
guys.
sure you read Les at PHLY as well. Doing a great job over there. Thanks, Les. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Yep. Great stuff from Les Bowen there. John, we got 5 minutes left, and I'm going to do the Saquon Barkley jersey giveaway. Maybe I'll get some people back on my good side, John. I'm giving away a jersey to the people as they're all pretty.
Oh yeah, that'll get free stuff. Will always get you in people's good graces.